Ultraman for the Super Nintendo Entertainment System. Well, I believe Stuttering Craig of Screw Attack fame had put it ever so eloquently back in the early days when he did the video game vault for this game.
This game Ultra sucked.
Good old classic Screw Attack never gets old. Unlike current modern day Screw Attack, which got as old as Granny Pants real quick. Wow, that was a sucky quip, man. You wanna know what else is sucky? Ultraman for the Super Nintendo. Released in 1991 by Bandai, Ultraman, or Ultraman Towards the Future, as the title screen refers to it, is a one-on-one fighting game in which you assume control of the eponymous tokusatsu legend that is Ultraman, and fight off hordes of rubber monsters using your ultra-destructive weapons of ultra mass destruction. Now, by the looks of things, Ultraman appears to be aping the fighting game format popularized by Capcom's Street Fighter II, released around the same time in the arcades, and basically redefining that genre of video game for many Johnny-come-latelys to emulate later on. And lots of people will agree with this assessment when it comes to Ultraman. But the truth of the matter is that Ultraman doesn't feel like a derivative of Street Fighter II. Oh no. This is more of a derivative of Street Fighter I, the 1987 Capcom arcade game that is also a one-on-one fighting game. A crappy one-on-one fighting game with a frustrating and unresponsive control scheme and limited options. And indeed, Ultraman's control scheme is quite convoluted indeed. Basically, your B button punches, your A button kicks, your X button jumps, Y button executes a special attack, L and R button selects from one of 4 special attacks you're able to do depending on how much power you have stored in your power meter. There's a couple other moves in there too, like a throw attack, evasive roll that doesn't do a good job evading, but it's there. You have super jumping, in which you could jump 50,000 feet into the air, and the like. Now, aside from the blatant absurdity of including a jump button in a two-dimensional one-on-one fighting game rather than, just tapping up on the D-pad to jump, never mind the fact that mapping said jump on a button you wouldn't normally associate with jumping in general, especially on the Super Nintendo, which already makes the jumping even more awkward. The idea of switching between special moves is a bit cumbersome. You see, you have 4 special moves at your disposal, each subsequent move requiring more power than the previous one. Now, ideally, the game would have you automatically use the special move associated with the power level you have. So if you're at level 3 power, for example, and you press the Y button, you'll execute your level 3 attack automatically. But in Ultraman, you're stuck with the level 1 move even when your meter is maxed out to level 4, and you have to cycle through to the move list to perform your finishing move. Now, we're going to get to the finisher part later, but having to cycle through your moveset to use a special move? Too much busy work, and something that tends to be forgotten in an intense round of Ultraman. Why not use traditional fighting game commands like quarter circle forwards, quarter circle backwards, the like? I mean, you need to do a quarter circle to roll, why not add a punch button to it and do special attacks? Or, in an attempt to make myself sound really stupid for comparing a 1991 game to a 1994 release, why not do it like Power Rangers on Super Nintendo? Specifically the Zord fights. Yeah, that thing had a jump button too, but it was on the B button, which makes some semblance of sense. But also, the special attack you perform is dependent on your power level. You don't have to cycle through a moveset to pick out your strongest move. You just max out your meter, you press the button, and it's done. I'm probably making this sound like a bigger deal than it is, but the whole thing of selecting your moves, it just comes off as cumbersomely unnecessary busy work, which slows the game down a notch. And Ultraman already controls enough like a sloth that the game almost looks to be played in slow motion. All your attacks take too long to execute, collision detection is almost a pipe dream most of the time, and most of all, Ultraman is easily knocked down by touching the monster. Which, in any other fighting game, if you touch an enemy, you only get knocked down when the other guy puts you down. But not Ultraman, not in this game. He jumps into an enemy, he goes down like an ultra female dog. It's perhaps the most embarrassing takedown of a superhero ever witnessed since Silver Surfer got killed by rubber duckies on the NES. They did try a couple interesting concepts. Both Ultraman and his enemies slowly regenerate their health. No biggie actually, adds a bit to the overall challenge while giving players a fighting chance to get victory from the things of this defeat. lost my train of thought. The other concept is finishing your opponent with a final attack. Once your enemy's meter starts flashing finish, you'll have to build up your power meter to level 4 and execute your final attack to finish him off and clear the stage. The problem with this concept in execution is that you often have to keep the pressure on your opponent and repeatedly land blows to keep him in a finishing state, as he could still gradually regain a bit of health. This eventually brings up the likely scenario of where your opponent is ripe for the finish, and as you execute your final attack that you've spent the whole round building up to, he suddenly regains a bit of health, and that saves his ass from being finished, thus prolonging the battle unnecessarily since you have to build your power meter once more in order to execute another final attack. And considering you only have 3 minutes to win this battle in Ultraman tradition, this ends up being a major source of frustration and can potentially screw you over out of a hard-fought victory. This becomes an even more likely scenario if you lose a chance. Ultraman has 3 chances, and every time he's defeated he could jump back into a fight and challenge again. Your enemy won't regain health, which should make the battle easier, but you still gotta charge that power meter to maximum to finish him off. You know, the whole idea of finishers is an interesting idea, but the poor execution makes it more of a piss-off than anything, and only serves to add to the overall frustration of the game, already compounded by a cumbersome control scheme and relentless opposition. And although you could tweak the difficulty level in the hidden option menu, there is no 2-player gameplay. All things considered thus far, however, that's probably a blessing in disguise. I don't think you want a buddy playing this game with you, or vice versa. In terms of graphics, Ultraman is nothing to write home about. Ultraman looks alright, the monsters look alright, the various playfields look alright. The intermissions with Ultraman flying and growing look alright. I don't know. You'd figure a game with huge, giant rubber monsters as the premise would convey some level of massiveness, for lack of a better term. But everything just feels, I don't know, small. Again, I hate to bring it up because I'm sure some Toku fan would take some level of offense to what I'm going to say. The Power Rangers on the Super Nintendo did it better with its sword segments. The fighters just look big and convey that level of bigness that Ultraman does not. Again, the graphics aren't bad, they're alright, but at the same time, it's a bit lacking. On the other hand, though, I kind of like the soundtrack in this game. It's cheesy, it's a cheesy little soundtrack, fits the material, nothing particularly great, but it does fit the material, and there are a couple decent tunes in there. Sound effects are rather average. Ultraman's grunt whenever he does anything gets annoying after a while, but doesn't kill the overall package. Hell, we already have enough problems doing that already. The music, in my mind, though, is Ultraman's only saving grace. Bottom line, Ultraman for the Super Nintendo is a pretty terrible video game. And that's not a term that I usually toss around. I wanted to give this game a fair shake, despite most of the negative reactions I've heard about this game. But the flaws are simply too numerous to overcome, and too crippling of an experience to genuinely enjoy. Now, I'm aware that there's a few folks that actually like this thing and think it's pretty decent. And you know what? More power to them. I, on the other hand, think it's pretty bad. Couple worthwhile ideas, yes, but piss poor execution. And that's really all I gotta say on that count. You know, overall, if you're a fan of the Ultraman series and you want a good video game worthy of the franchise, you're not gonna find it here. Sorry.